What is up everybody, how's it going? It's Burke aka Dansgwait here, and with the release of Final Fantasy X and X-2 on the Switch, I wanted to make a quick video about 5 reasons why you might want to be trying this game if you haven't tried it before. Now, people that have been following the channel will have 50 reasons why they should play this game because they will have heard me raving about it for the last like 4 or 5 years that I've had it on the channel. But if anybody is new to this and they're wondering whether this game is worth investing in, and if you're thinking, well, maybe it seems a little bit expensive, I'm not sure if I want to get this remaster, is Final Fantasy X even that good, etc., then I have 5 personal reasons why I think that you might enjoy this experience and why I think you should get it for the Switch. So let's talk about it. The first thing I want to talk about is the value, because when you see it on paper you might think, well, this is a really old game and it's coming out now, it's just a remaster, and why would I pay $45 or £45 for this particular game? Well, it totally depends on your perspective. It is a bit overpriced in my opinion, but if you also think of it on the flip side, if this is a game that you end up enjoying, there is a huge amount of content here, because remember, you are getting 2 games and both games are potentially as long as each other. Because this is the remaster release, we have a lot of side quest content for the games as well, stuff that wasn't in the original US release of Final Fantasy X, etc. So when you put it all together, if you want to get all of the achievements on both of the games, there is at least 150 to 200 hours of content on here. So when you put it in that perspective, and the fact that the remaster genuinely does make this game look pretty good, and it does modernize it enough, and there's enough enhancements in there to make it feel and look pretty modern, I think it's much better value than it actually looks. So the price is a little bit high, but I personally think that if you do get some enjoyment out of the game, there is just so much content on offer here that when you look at the bigger picture and how many hours you could potentially be sinking into these 2 games, then it's well worth the money, and you'll be probably going for replays, you'll be going for challenge runs, etc, etc. So when you think of it in that sense, I think it's pretty decent value for money. Another reason why you might want to be playing Final Fantasy X is if you have some previous Final Fantasy experience, maybe you've played the more modern one, so you've played like 13 or you played 15, and you're wondering, should I go back and give Final Fantasy X a go, or should I just, wait for the next Final Fantasy release, or just like not be playing any Final Fantasy? I personally think Final Fantasy X is a great one to get into, because if you're someone who's a bit newer to the series, you don't have like a huge amount of Final Fantasy experience, you haven't played a lot of the different systems, etc., I think Final Fantasy X is a great newcomer's Final Fantasy as well. It has the turn-based system, it's unique in that sense. It's a conditional turn-based system, so it's not like the old school Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, those kind of games, and it's also not like the very active and almost kind of action style of like Final Fantasy 15. It's pretty unique in that sense. You get to see the cause and effects the actions have. You can take your time, because when you're new to a game like Final Fantasy, I think if you have an active battle system where the ATB bar is constantly filling up and you have to make decisions quickly, etc., it can get a little bit daunting for newcomers to the Final Fantasy series. So Final Fantasy's battle system, I think, is one that's great anyway, because the more you play it, the more you learn about it, the more it becomes like a chess match. You can see how your turns get affected, how being in like haste status changes things, how delay attacks change things. The fact that you can kind of plan your moves in advance and see how they're going to be affected, etc., I think is a very powerful thing. It's unique, and to be honest, I don't think it's something we're really going to be seeing in Final Fantasy again for the future, because for Final Fantasy X, like the graphical style of the game, the visual fidelity and stuff that you have, it is a early 2000s game. And would that kind of style work with a Final Fantasy made in like 2015, 2020, 2025? I don't really think so. It's going to be difficult for Final Fantasy to go back to the old school turn-based system, because things just look so realistic now, and gamers tend to demand, more fluid games, games where things are constantly happening and it's not kind of standing there, picking turns, choosing moves, etc, etc. So in that sense, because you're probably not going to see it too often in the future, it's good to go back and see how these games worked and the whole different vibe that they have, because the turn-based system, I think, because they offer something unique and something different from the more modern Final Fantasies that you might have played or that you will be playing. So that's something interesting and I think worth considering if you're wondering about whether you should play Final Fantasy X. The next thing is similar to the first point, it kind of piggybacks off that. I personally think that Final Fantasy X has a great amount of content in there in terms of the mini-games, in terms of the side quests, in terms of the number of bosses that you can fight, etc. And this is something that if you are into the gameplay, if you're enjoying that turn-based system, you're enjoying the world of Spira, it's something that's going to keep you hooked and it's going to keep you playing. Now for me, the whole thing was, once I was done with the story, I was just hungry for more stuff from the game. I wanted to find more areas, I wanted to fight more bosses, I wanted to get better equipment, etc, etc. And I think Final Fantasy X was one of the games that did that the best, in my opinion. So you have the Monster Arena, which offers so many new bosses. I think probably like a good 20 or so new bosses at the very least. Then you have all of the Dark Aeon content that was not in the US release of Final Fantasy X on the PS2. You've got Penance, which is one of the ultimate super bosses that I think every Final Fantasy player should at least attempt, should give it a go, because it's a really iconic boss. 12 million HP, which is insane for Final Fantasy X. It will take you like an hour to beat, maybe more the first time, but it's a really thrilling battle and you will really love beating Penance for the first time. So in terms of the side quests, there are some very infamously annoying side quests. So Blitzball is very hit and miss. There's a lot of people that hate the Blitzball in Final Fantasy, but there's a chance that you might enjoy it, and there's plenty of guides online and plenty of videos on how to master Blitzball and how to get better at it. And alongside that, you have stuff like the Celestial Weapons, so getting everyone's ultimate weapons. That can be a bit of a pain in the arse, but there's never been a better time to try these things, because there's so many tips and tricks online about how to do things better, how to do them more efficiently, how to do them easily, etc. I mean, on my channel alone, there are just so many videos dedicated to Final Fantasy X that help is always going to be found for it. So when it comes to the side questing and all the extras that you can do outside of the story, I think Final Fantasy X has a lot to offer. And X-2, even though this video is more Final Fantasy X focused, for X-2 they've added some things in there that I also think are very interesting, that are worth your time as well. 100%ing X-2 is insanity, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. But if you're enjoying the story and the world and you want to get a little bit more out of the game, there is plenty to do in Final Fantasy X-2 as well. So stuff like the Via Infinito and some more optional bosses, the monster creation and the monster arena and all that kind of stuff is all good fun, and you're going to be sinking plenty of hours into all of that stuff. So there is definitely a lot there outside of the story as well that I think will keep you interested and will keep you playing and will really help you get your money's worth as well. Moving on to the more subjective side of things, I personally think that Final Fantasy X has one of the greatest stories in the entire Final Fantasy franchise. I mean, this is extremely subjective, but from what I've seen, from what I've experienced, from what I've read of people, the story is one of the things that people hold up to a very, very high standard. There's always going to be that group of people that will see the story and say it sucks or whatever, but I think the general majority will agree with me that Final Fantasy X has one of the greatest stories in the Final Fantasy franchise. At its core, there is a very strong love element that goes on. There's a lot of twists and turns that happen in the story. There's some wonderful characters in there. And as you go through the geography of the different locations, the beautiful FMVs, I think Final Fantasy X has some of the most beautiful FMVs of any Final Fantasy game. The soundtrack is immense, so many great tracks in there. I think as an audio-visual storytelling experience, I think Final Fantasy X is one of the greatest. And a lot of people would criticize Final Fantasy X for being a linear game, but I think it's also one of the game's biggest strengths, because it enabled it to tell its story in the way that it wanted to tell it, and with the pacing that it wanted to tell it as well. I mean, because the story is a pilgrimage, pilgrimages tend to be fairly linear, and the game mirrors that, and I just think personally they did an absolutely wonderful job, and all of the audio-visual elements that needed to come together to tell a wonderful story were all there. And I'm pretty sure that once you get to the end of it, tears are going to be shed. You're going to have some great moments where you're going to be seeing twists and turns and emotional spikes all over the place. So definitely a story worth experiencing. Finally, I would say that the characters of Final Fantasy X I think are also some of the most memorable in the entire franchise. So you have the protagonist, Tidus, who kind of splits audiences a little bit. There is a genuine group of people that do not like him, but that's kind of to each their own. I think his development is wonderful to watch. Like the way he comes into the story, he can be quite annoying and a bit whingy and a bit of a crybaby at the beginning. When he comes to learn how Spira works, and Yuna's pilgrimage, he becomes a part of the team. He gets to truly see what these people are about, what they're trying to do, how he factors into all of this and all that kind of business. The way he kind of grows from that and the way he kind of becomes a true hero in my eyes is something that's always been fun to experience. So I think the protagonist has always been a plus for this game. But alongside him, you have some truly iconic characters. This wouldn't be a Dan's Go 8 video if I didn't throw in a mention for my favourite Final Fantasy character of all time, which is Auron. I spent an entire video talking about him and his story and why I think he's so incredible, But suffice to say that he is one of the most incredible characters in the Final Fantasy universe, and I'm pretty sure that once you've completed the game, even if you don't completely agree with me, you will definitely see the reasons why this guy is so well loved and such an iconic character for the Final Fantasy franchise. He is just an absolute legend. I think this team is literally like my favourite team of any Final Fantasy. Again, totally subjective, but they all have their own kind of unique hook, they all have their own unique story, they all have their arcs, they all have their growth, and even one of the most like verbally insignificant characters, so like Kimahri, has so many fewer lines and words than everybody else. He seems like he's not a very big player in the story, but even when you look at him in isolation and his growth in the story and everything that he experiences, he comes through as like one of the kind of unsung heroes of Final Fantasy X. And for every single character you can see a genuine growth, you can see the story arc, and everybody gets their moment to shine in the story. And I think they just all mesh together so well that by the time you get to the end of the story and the end of the experience, you are going to end up loving this group of characters. So it's definitely a ride worth going on, if you ask me. Just as a final thing, I think Final Fantasy X has an incredible community of fans around it as well. I mean, I think especially nowadays with the internet, and people are just so much more social online, like around games, they want to talk about games, they want to discuss games. I think Final Fantasy X just has a wonderful community. I can only really speak from it from my own perspective because my channel features so much Final Fantasy X and so many people know me for Final Fantasy X. But the amount of amazing people that have come to the channel that I've gotten to know through our mutual love of Final Fantasy X, they're just generally a great bunch of people. And I think Final Fantasy X is the kind of game where if you do get into it and you do enjoy it, you complete the story, you complete the game, and you're just totally like engrossed with it, you love the game, there is a really nice and large community of people out there that you can share your experiences with, that you can talk to, you can discuss like things about the story, about the lore and all that kind of business, and that's really going to extend the amount of utility that you get from the game. So there's lots of really cool online communities available for a game like Final Fantasy X as well, in my opinion, including this channel, of course. So there we go, guys. There's some thoughts from me about why I think you should be getting into Final Fantasy X. I spend so much time discussing why I love the game and all that kind of business, but I want to kind of filter it down for potentially newer people to the channel that haven't played the game before and that are wondering whether they should get it on the Switch. And for me personally, if you are at least a bit of a fan of Final Fantasy, it's a no-brainer. There's just so much content there, and the fact that you can play it on the Switch now and have it portable, like you can play it on the go, play it wherever you like, it's an absolute no-brainer. You've got to give it a go, and I think the odds of you being ultimately very disappointed with your purchase are quite low. It's not zero, of course, it never is, but I personally think there is a great chance that you will love this game. If you think the price is too high, you think that it doesn't deserve to have a price tag that high, maybe it's worth waiting a little bit for the price to go down. But if you think that there's a chance that you could definitely enjoy this game, maybe you've seen a little bit of gameplay online, and you think that it's the kind of story or the kind of situation that you could be enjoying, I wouldn't hold back. I'd get into Final Fantasy X, and I personally think that you will definitely not regret it. So thanks for watching, guys, and if you do have a Nintendo Switch, I definitely recommend to pick up that copy of Final Fantasy X and join our community of fans, because you are going to have a wonderful, unforgettable time. Take care.